may proceed.
May it please the court.
Yes.
We heard a lot about rules at the beginning of the personal injury lawyer's presentation. I'm going to tell you the most important rule I learned as a young lawyer. In case anybody can't read my handwriting, that says do not lie to the jury if you hope to get the verdict that you've requested. What we heard was a conspiracy of lies. The truth is going to come from that witness stand. It's going to be in the documents, the records, the evidence. My mentor, who I'm lucky enough to have sitting at this table with me, told me a long time ago to keep track of the other side's opening statement and write down their misrepresentations so you can come back to the jury in closing argument and show them where they haven't kept their word. You see, a lawyer's opening statement is not like a politician's speech. You don't get to see if the politician is going to keep her word before you vote for her. You get to see if we keep our word before you vote in this case. My name is Andino Reynal, and I am honored to represent Alex Jones and FSS. He is one of the most polarizing figures in this nation. And I'm honored to represent him, not because I agree with everything that he says, but because I believe in his right to say, and I believe in every American's right to choose what they watch and what they listen to and what they believe. Mr. Bankston's first lie came at 9:37 a.m. when he said that InfoWars was one of the most significant networks in the USA. In fact, the evidence will show that in 2018, InfoWars was completely deplatformed. You will not find InfoWars on YouTube. You will not find InfoWars on Facebook. You will not find InfoWars on Twitter. You will find it absolutely nowhere. Mr. Jones has been canceled, punished for statements that are related to this case. Statements we don't dispute were wrong. But in order to render a just verdict, you need to understand and be able to see all the evidence and understand the chain of events and understand what he said and when he said it. I'm going to take my time, and I promise not to go on for too long. To first tell you a little bit about this case, go through a timeline of events, and then lay out why we believe the evidence will show that we should receive your verdict. On December 14th, 2012, Adam Lanza, a mentally disturbed young man in Connecticut, woke up early. He got a .22 caliber bolt-action rifle, went to his mother's room, and shot her in the head while she was sleeping. He then armed himself with a long gun and 2 pistols, and some reports say he drove by the high school where he'd been a student, saw 2 police cars, and diverted to the elementary school. He shot his way in and killed 20 first graders, 6-year-olds, and 6 school employees. In the span of 10 minutes, he created pain that would last a lifetime. Alex Jones was 1,500 miles away in Austin, Texas, dropping off his own 6-year-old at school. When he heard about the event, he was shocked and saddened, just like everyone else in America. He was also suspicious. Alex Jones has hosted a show called InfoWars since the late 1990s. He started out on Austin Public Access. InfoWars is a talk show where Alex Jones discusses, and some of the people who work with him, discuss conspiracy theories. And they discuss government cover-ups. And they discuss lies told by the mainstream media. And they try to give an alternative view. Mostly it's a college. So let's discuss what happened and go through the years. I want to clarify something. Because you're going to watch the videos. The videos are the most important part of this. Not cherry picking little snippets, but actually watching the videos. And I hope you hold the plaintiffs accountable. You're going to hear that Alex Jones was concerned about the government's response on the day of Sandy Hook. You're going to hear that he suspected the government, that he thought the government might have been involved. You are not going to hear him say that he didn't think any kids were killed at any time in 2012 or 2013, okay? So when you watch those videos, and watch them, when he says staged an attack, he means they committed an attack, okay? When he says false flag, he means the government attacked its own citizens to try and achieve a political end. Alex Jones doesn't trust the government. Millions of Americans don't trust the government. So let's talk about 2012. And the first thing I want to talk about is what happened in the immediate aftermath of the Sandy Hook murders. There was, and you'll see Alex, you'll be able to watch his response to it. Like him, everyone was heartbroken across the nation and across the world. And they showed their sympathy for the people of Newtown, Connecticut. You will hear from the witness stand, there were over 500,000 letters, cards, drawings. There were so many toys sent to the town because it had happened right around Christmas. So many toys sent around the town that they had to get a separate mail sorting facility to distribute the toys to other places. Millions of dollars went to the United Way to support the family members. President Obama got on a jet and flew there the next day. I mean, not to mention every senator from Connecticut, every mayor, every town politician, people from around the world gathered to mourn. The mainstream media also went. Unfortunately, mainstream media. Some of the people who went to Sandy Hook, and the evidence is going to show that Sandy Hook wasn't different from any other school shooting. I mean, we live in a nation divided. If you're blue, every time there's a school shooting, it's America's the most dangerous place in the world, and we need to ban the AR-15. And if you're red, every time there's a school shooting, it's, again, here they are, taking advantage of a tragedy to try and infringe upon our rights. Unfortunately, that's just the way things work in this country. And it was no different at Sandy Hook. Hours after the event, CNN, every major news source was there, interviewing people, broadcasting. The evidence is going to show calling for gun legislation. InfoWars, back in Austin, was also covering it in 2012 and 2013. It was big news. And InfoWars never contested that the children were murdered in 2012 or 2013. You'll watch the videos. I was surprised. I don't have them ready to play. You'll watch them, okay? Assess them yourself. They were covering it, and they were saying that it was being botched, mishandled, and used to push gun legislation. And you'll hear from the witness stand, they will admit to you that the investigation and the coverage of the event was botched at first. I mean, I don't know what we have now. There's an enormous report. But you will hear covered that CNN misidentified the shooter and put this man's picture up from Hoboken, New Jersey for 4 hours and said that he was the real killer. You will hear that there was another, well, at least they reported that there was another man in handcuffs outside. You will hear that it was reported, and you'll see it in the video, that there were people who were arrested. There was chaos. And we all know that that's what happens after these events, okay? Unfortunately, in this case, the chaos, the bad coverage, led a lot of people to doubt. People who became known as truthers, or the truth community. These were hundreds or even thousands of Americans who got together on Facebook and on Twitter and on YouTube and discussed the event and pointed out what they saw as inconsistencies in it, that they believed suggested that there was a cover-up, that the government wasn't being forthright about what had happened, okay? And some of these people are very, very extreme. Okay? They are. I want to mention 4 people in particular because they were leading members of the truth community. All right? They were all over YouTube. You'll hear that some of the videos they made got 10 million views. This was big news. And InfoWars was covering the questions that people have. Because InfoWars believes in people's right to question information. And they were interviewing these people and saying, hey, you have questions about Sandy Hook. What are they? Okay? Now there did come a time when Alex was taken in, right? And did become, for a time, one of those people. We're not hiding that. But it wasn't in 2012, and it wasn't in 2013. The four people are Dr. James Fetzer, who was a professor at the University of Minnesota at the time, Dr. James Tracy, who was a professor at Atlantic Florida University of Media Studies at the time, Wolfgang Halbig, who you'll see, who was a Florida state trooper, who did work for the Seminole County Education Board, and who claimed to be a school safety expert, who had been interviewed on multiple channels and had even testified before Congress. Some of that now, 2020 hindsight, I don't think is true. Okay, but he presented himself that way at the time. And if you understand the news cycle and how it works, commentators, people on talk shows, they get information, they run with it. Alex Jones was wrong to believe these people. But he didn't do it out of spite. The evidence will show that he did it because he believed it, because he thought it was important coverage, because he thought that these people had a right to say what they were doing, that a citizen has a right to get on InfoWars and talk about what their questions are. So let's talk about the bad facts. I mean, we talked about brutal honesty. (2014 to 2015) in the summer for the rest of this. Alex Jones has apologized repeatedly for the coverage that he gave to Sandy Hook from 2014 to the summer of 2015. And he has every reason. He does. They trusted people that they shouldn't have trusted. It created a lot of tension at his company. There were arguments about it. But he felt the show was important, and he aired it. He regrets that now, and he said so. The thing you have to remember about Alex is that he has been talking about conspiracy theories and taking on the elites, whether that is the Bush administration or the Obama administration or the Clinton administration. He's been the outsider for a really long time. And by the time we get to 2014 and 2015, he felt he had seen what he perceived as so many lies and so many cover-ups and so much hand-washing of the facts that he had become biased. He was looking at the world through dirty glasses. And if you look at the world through dirty glasses, everything you see is dirty. Important for you to know, I don't think there's any evidence that is going to come from that witness stand that Mr. Heslin or Miss Lewis ever watched this show during this period. And I can assure you that there will be no evidence that Mr. Jones or any member of his staff named Mr. Heslin or Miss Lewis during this time. So just to recap where we are, 2012, 2013, InfoWars is covering Sandy Hook with a slant that children were really murdered, but there's a government cover-up and potentially government involvement. That doesn't say that Mr. Heslin and Ms. Lewis aren't the parents of a dead child. It doesn't. So we get to this period, and it ends in July. And after July, we have quiet from InfoWars on this topic.
Yeah. I'll object to the reasons you just discussed about the motion to claim that InfoWars was quiet in July, so remember that's...
I'm free to discuss what I believe the evidence will show, Your Honor.
You are free to discuss what the evidence will show, but liability has been established in this case, and you are close to the edge on that. So please be more careful.
Let's talk about 2016. It was an election year. It was a very contested election. And Mr. Jones, for the first time in his entire career, supported a candidate. And he was associated with Donald Trump. Hillary saw that as a liability for Trump and made Alex a big part of her campaign, saying that Alex had repeatedly said on his show that Sandy Hook hadn't happened. By this point, Alex didn't believe that. So on November 18th, 2016, he put out a video called Final Statement on Sandy Hook. And you'll have the opportunity to watch that video. And I think you should insist on watching that video in its totality, just like every video that's going to come into evidence. Because only then can you understand what really happened. You can't cherry pick. And he said, I want to reach out to the victims of criminal crimes and listeners to clarify where I stand on Sandy Hook. The last 3 or 4 years, the mainstream media has made attacks against me that I said no one died. I've hosted debates with both sides of the aisles. I've always said I'm not really sure of what happened. I can see based on the evidence why people might say nobody died, but I don't know what happened. I know mass shootings happen. The official story, however, of Sandy Hook has more holes in it than Swiss cheese. And he still believes that. That's it. Only statement on Sandy Hook for the whole year. Megyn Kelly's no friend to Donald Trump. And she decided that she was going to run a hit piece on Alex Jones about this issue. Alex Jones hadn't brought it up since November. She brought it up. She decided to air a show where she would confront Alex who she got to interview by misrepresenting the purpose of the story, and juxtapose it with an interview with Mr. Heslin. Alex had never said Mr. Heslin's name. He'd never said Miss Lewis's name. The show is about to air. And before it airs, Alex says, I need to clear the air because this is going to misrepresent me. And he says, in a piece, I believe children died there. So the show airs, and afterwards, a young reporter at InfoWars sees an article on a website called Zero Hedge. And that article is in evidence. And the judge has already found InfoWars, or Free Speech Systems, parent company for InfoWars, and Alex Jones guilty for those statements. But you are free to consider the intent with which they were made in determining whether they were made maliciously or in good faith. And you're going to hear from the reporter who made the statements.
Your Honor, I'm going to have to object again to the comment.
So you're gonna have to explain the difference between defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, for which Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems LLC have already been found liable, includes the state of mind of the actor, which means it has already been established that the acts they took to inflict the emotional distress were intentional. Defamation does not include that in the same way. So you're going to have to clarify that if you're going to go down that path.
I think the court has already clarified. Let me see. This is the article. It's in evidence. I'm going to move this because I'm sure that most of you can't see it. And basically, the article, you'll have it, you can read it, you can fact check me. But basically the article says that Megyn Kelly isn't doing a good job fact checking her sources because she didn't run down a seeming inconsistency between what the coroner said about the parents not being brought into contact with the bodies on the day of the shooting and what Mr. Heslin said about holding his child on the day of the shooting. And interestingly, it states Alex Jones's official position is that he believes children died in the shooting. In fact, during a 2014 account of a hearing before the Newtown Board of Education, an InfoWars journalist did not dispute that Adam Lanza had perpetrated the shooting. There are 4 big reasons why I'm going to come back to you at the end of this case and ask for your verdict. The first reason is because when you look at the totality of the coverage, the evidence will be that InfoWars' coverage of the Sandy Hook incident between 2012 and 2018 was less than 1/2 of 1% of its total coverage. It was barely 27 hours.
I can object again to this entire,
He can say this, he's gotta show it.
okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Less than 1/2. And remember rule number 1, the lawyer who lies deserves to lose. Okay? Less than 1/2 of 1% of total coverage on the show. Okay. And important to add to that is, remember, you got CNN and Fox and every other newscast covering this issue, right? Especially back in 2013. And InfoWars is a whisper in a hurricane. Point number 2. The no one died at Sandy Hook lie did not begin with Mr. Jones. It began with Fetzer and Tracy and Halvick and a guy named Steve Pachenik, who was a former State Department official and a psychiatrist. They were 4 of the most prominent among thousands of people who were saying this on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. Given that, it brings me to point number 3. You are still allowed to decide how much damage Alex Jones caused. And in doing so, you can assess whether his words made their way to the ears of the plaintiffs. You can assess whether anybody was moved to act by anything that Alex Jones said. And the evidence will show that he did not cause the harassment. Number 4. Mr. Bankston, the personal injury lawyer, talked about this a little bit. Actual damages. The first question you're going to be asked to answer is actual damages. You will see no evidence that it was Alex Jones, the talk show host, and not Adam Lanza, the mass murderer, that caused the mental anguish that is honestly suffered by Mr. Heslin and Ms. Lewis. The videos are so important. Watch. Before I sit down, I want to make a couple more points. Number 1, Alex Jones has apologized repeatedly for what he said. And I expect he'll do so again here. Alex Jones has already been punished. Because of this case, he lost all his access to the internet. Millions of dollars. Canceled. He regrets what he did. And he's paying a price for it. He's paying a price for it today. He pays a price for it every time somebody on the street chases him and says, "You killed the children at Sandy Hook," and throws coffee on it. And because he's been canceled, nobody can hear his side of the story. Nobody can see the texture of reality. We are not cardboard cutouts. We are all real complex people. People make mistakes. They pay for it. They want to tell you this is the great Satan. This man is not a cardboard cutout. He's a human being just like every one of us with his own ideas. You will be able to decide. And I want you to ask yourself at the end of this case, is this an honest attempt by personal injury lawyers to get just compensation for damages that were actually experienced? Or is this a cynical attempt by personal injury lawyers to enrich themselves while silencing a political opponent and limiting every American's right to choose what they watch and what they listen to? I look forward to presenting this case to you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Reynal. Before we break, I see people with gum in their mouth. It's clearly stated on the door, there is no eating, there is no gum in this courtroom. If I see it again, I'll stop. I'm talking, sir. The number one rule in court, fair or not, is when the judge is talking, nobody else is. Even if I interrupt someone. There is no chewing gum, there is no soda, there is no eating in this courtroom. If I see it again, I'll have you removed. There is no recording of any kind of the YouTube feed or the proceedings in this courtroom without prior written permission signed by me. No photographs, no audio recording, no video recording. So I'm not taking away everyone's phones in the room, but if we find out that you're doing one of those things, you will be removed. There is no talking in front of, or approaching by anyone of my jury. If somebody does that in the courthouse, they will be removed until this trial is over. Just want to make that very clear to everyone. We're going to break for lunch. It's noon. We're going to break until 1:30. My jury can go ahead and head on out. The lawyers need me right now.
It doesn't matter when, but I have